is episode 7 of season 2 with me, Tiffany, Hinton, and special guest Genevieve from the Prospect Heights, Illinois area. And today we're talking chicken politics on Cultivating Guts. Hello, it's Tiffany, and welcome back to Cultivating Guts, a podcast where we discuss gardening, homesteading, living fully, and following our intuition. I'm super excited to be back with you guys. I've had so many insightful moments. We've taken some vacation. I've taken some downtime. I've been out in the garden. We've built some gardens, and there's so much that has happened between spring and summer, and I'm here back today with you on Cultivating Guts, a very, very topic that's like so close to my heart. It makes me emotional. It makes me emotionally charged. We'll see what comes out today on the podcast, but I am going to be sitting down and having a discussion with Genevieve, one of my local neighbors and friends, and we're going to be talking about chicken politics. And if you have heard anything from my husband, he'll tell you I'm a chicken politician lately. But there are some things that our community is proposing that we feel like are taking us backwards. And so me and Genevieve today are going to talk about that and share our perspectives and share kind of where we think we should be going as a community. And it's going to be interesting. If you are watching us, we're on video. Hello. And if you want to see us on video, we're on video on Spotify and on YouTube. YouTube is youtube.com/Tiffany Hinton. Super excited to see you guys. Hello. But before we get started, I'd love for you to do me a favor and share this podcast. Share this podcast on your favorite social media, whether that's Instagram or Facebook, or sending in an email to your friend. We want to spread the word because backyard chicken keeping is becoming more and more normal. And as much as many of you know that I don't want to be normal, because it's normalizing, there is a huge education that needs to happen. And I think that just goes along with how the world evolves over time. And we'll get more into details about that. But my huge ask today is for you to share this video, share the podcast, the audio with somebody else. Spread the word, right? It's the butterfly effect. It's the ripple effect. Like, you share it once, they're going to listen to it. If they find benefit, if they find education, if they find information like, oh my gosh, I didn't think about it that way, they're going to share it with somebody else. And we're going to start to create the effect and the understanding that we need from the community to start to realize that backyard chicken keeping is normal anymore. It's the way forward. And so I'm super excited to jump into this interview today on Cultivating Guts with Genevieve. If you also want to post this on Instagram, tag me at I am Tiffany Hinton or at Cultivating Guts. I'll repost any stories that you share. Love to do that. I know I've been a little silent on Instagram. Like I said, I've been so much just out in the garden, and we just went on vacation, and just there's a lot in life, and it's been wonderful. But I am here with you today, so thank you for tuning in, and we're gonna hop into the podcast. Welcome back to Cultivating Guts. I'm super excited today to be here with another local person from our community. Genevieve is here, and Genevieve is a fellow chicken keeper or chicken tender, chicken mama. What is your preferred title?
Oh, yes. I go by anything polite. We do call ourselves chicken tenders over here.
I love it. I love it. So part of the reason we're doing this podcast is because we have what I've been calling chicken politics. We have a chicken politics topic happening right now in our community, and we wanted to bring it out to a larger audience for support, but also so you guys can understand in case this tends to happen or could happen in your own community. So we're sharing from that perspective. But Genevieve, do you want to give us a little bit of background about kind of what's happening right now in Prospect Heights?
Sure. So I've been keeping chickens for a few years. My husband and I moved here with the intent of homesteading. So basically just living as sustainable a life as we can, gardening, trying to be as mindful of and respectful of nature as possible. And after we moved here, we started a family. So I have a daughter who is about a year and a half old, and we're trying to raise her in that way as well. Very connected to nature with respect for animals and plants, and just a cognizance of how everything works together. So things seem to be going great. Actually, we are friends with all of our neighbors, and many of whom are chicken keepers, but many of whom are not. The people on either sides of me are not, but they love the chickens. There are no issues with them whatsoever. But it sounds like somewhere else in the community, there were a couple of people who got in touch with the city and said that they had a neighbor who was creating a disturbance with, it sounded like rooster noise, perhaps. And they felt that it was time for the city to take action. So they were at a meeting in October of 2023, and they at the time said that they felt chickens should be banned altogether. Then someone else got up and said that if they can't get a ban on chickens altogether, they would like to see them severely limited. And they gave examples of some towns nearby who don't allow them, or who allow, only 4 or 5 or something like that. So the town council decided that they were going to reevaluate the situation on the basis of those 3 people. And they did schedule a meeting for January to discuss it. And the meeting was standing room only, massive support for chickens and for chicken keepers in the community. There's a petition with, I think, about 1,400 signatures on it from residents who support chicken keeping. So these are not just people who have them, but just people who feel that the current ordinances that protect people against noise and odor and disturbance and all that need to be enforced, so that people who do have legitimate issues are getting help from our enforcement bodies and the city and the police. But also that we don't need to restrict chicken keeping, because the vast majority of people are doing a very good job of it. And,
Yeah.
there are many benefits for the community when people are allowed to keep chickens without, being restricted as far as the number or the sex of the animal.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as Genevieve mentioned, I was at the January meeting. I was standing room only, and everybody that spoke, and if you're interested, that link is out on YouTube on the city's website. But everybody that spoke at that January event was for chickens, and that was an open town hall. So, if you've never been to a city town hall, that's an experience that I think everybody should have at least once in their life, where you get a chance to voice your opinion to your council or to the governing bodies. And then we met again in March, you're right. And it's been an interesting few months. And then this week, there was an article in the Daily Herald, and I think that brought a lot of emotions back out, because from my perspective, the article didn't take into consideration a lot of the education and the research that the community had been doing, in addition to just the city employee. So that being
Oh,
said, right? When I think about like chicken keeping as a whole, and it's kind of interesting too, because a lot of what's trending now for me on TikTok or Instagram and what shows up is like, hey, I want to live like my grandma did, right? There's a lot of different reels that show up about that. But in reality, that's the one thing I feel like the pandemic gave us. It gave us the opportunity to kind of take a slower pace at life and
right,
figure things out, so that you could find out, um, you know, do you want to garden more? Do you have time in your life to, raise chickens, make your own eggs, create that sustainability? Because it slowed us down a lot so that we could experience some of that. And for a lot of us, it was already a way of life. I know it was for me. Or it was a turning point that said, yeah, this is for me, and I'm going to move forward in this sustainability method. What are you
right.
seeing when it comes to what's becoming more normal?
Well, I think that if we were having this discussion maybe 15 years ago, and you said, "Oh, I'm interviewing a chicken keeper who lives in a suburb," some people, depending on where they live, might have gone, "What? Chicken keeping, like in their yard?" But it wasn't just the pandemic. It's been going on for a while. It's becoming more and more common, and you can see that the laws have been changing for quite a while, especially after, like 2000, 2005. You really see a huge uptick in towns that are legalizing it, or, dropping any restrictions that they had, or making it actually more welcoming. So I thought it was interesting that at that January meeting in Prospect Heights, there was a realtor who stood up in support of chicken keeping and said, I have made so many house sales because I've been able to say Prospect Heights is different in this way from some of these more restrictive suburbs in the area. So currently you are allowed to keep chickens unrestricted, roosters unrestricted in the city of Chicago. It's largely very successful and
I also
non-disruptive,
read this week that the city of Chicago has an education program on chicken keeping in their public schools now.
which is
So they're even
wonderful.
more forward thinking, I think, which is amazing, helping educate.
Right, because I think that when people are nervous about it, a lot of that comes from myths and misconception. And I think also when people make mistakes in chicken keeping, it's just a lack of knowledge. So um, we need we need to lean into education and not treat this like some boogeyman. It's not a weird thing anymore. So to circle back to your question, what are we seeing? I think much more normalized, very curious responses that I get from people. So a lot of people will say, "Oh, I really want to do that," or "Oh, could I pick your brain about that?" And actually, I got a text today from a neighbor who said, "Oh, I'm moving forward with chickens, and can I have you come over and just give me some advice?" And I think those are the kinds of conversations we need to be feeding and nourishing, not conversations about just shutting it down. Because
Yeah.
when has that ever worked? Historically, just making something that everybody really wants illegal is not going to work. How about we lean into those connections about how to do it right, how to make it beneficial for the entire community, how to foster good relationships with your neighbors? For me and for the people around me, it's a huge benefit if you have a neighbor with chickens, because people go, "Oh, I'm going to get free chickens. Oh, I get free pest control. Oh, I get free fertilizer." People are much more knowledgeable about it. There are shows on public television about chicken keeping that people like to talk about. Even if they don't have them, they like to turn it on, get a little chicken TV, a little, just relaxation at the end of their day. That's certainly what the girls do for us. So
Sure.
I think that most of what I see is very, very overwhelmingly positive. And what we heard at that January or at the recording of the October meeting, the things that were negative were a few isolated comments that have less to do with chickens and more to do with uh, people having bad neighbor relationships.
Mhm.
So these people are not only complaining about chickens. It seems like maybe
Yeah.
the chicken was the thing that broke their back, but a lot of these are just issues with being neighborly at all, and people can hang their hat on the chicken issue. That being said, I just want to be clear, and I've told you this offline as well, that there is nothing a good chicken keeper can't stand more than a bad chicken keeper. So I think that if anybody is tempted to think that, oh, people are going to cover for each other because they both have chickens, no way. If you're
No,
keeping
it's
chickens
animal
in,
welfare, right? I
yeah,
look at
it's an
it the
animal
same way,
welfare
like with
issue.
dog owners. If there's somebody mistreating their dog, the other dog owner is going to turn them in first.
Right. You're horrified by that. And
Yeah.
the other thing about chickens is while they don't carry any diseases that can, they're not a hazard to humans, they can be contagious to one another. So if somebody is keeping animals in unsafe or unsanitary conditions, and then those animals get sick, they pose an issue for other chickens in the community. And I do not want that problem. I take very good care of my chickens. Things are clean, they are healthy. The girls have good climate control,
Right?
and this is, a personal thing, but I also vaccinate them against common chicken diseases. The chicks, vaccines for chickens are very common, and it only costs a few cents per bird. So it's, not very difficult, and it's not a political issue. It's just a, good
Yeah.
husbandry practice. But so me, I've done all this work. I've put all this time and effort and love and money into this, and it's not just a hobby. This is my way of life. So I am going to take it very seriously, and I expect other keepers to take it seriously too. So if somebody has a welfare issue, they think things are not being handled properly, absolutely. I and my fellow chicken keepers in the town, we want that to be addressed. We want that to be taken seriously. So, but yeah, I think a lot of people just don't know their rights here because they are protected. There are several ordinances in place about And most towns actually, you'll find will have an ordinance in place about anything, usually animal keeping, but really anything that can create noxious or pervasive odor or sound issues. So we all learn to live with a certain degree of unpleasantness or things we may not love. There are a lot of things like garbage collection or weed whackers or gas powered tractor mowers, which are very big here because people, live on half an acre or more. I live on a full acre. So you hear things like that or people's barking dogs and
Yeah.
whatnot. So, and certainly cicadas this year.
Lately, the
So
cicadas have been like so loud, even at
I
night, you can hear them
know.
through the windows.
There
It
was one
is,
week in
yeah.
particular where whenever we would come in from the backyard, our ears would be ringing.
Mhm.
And we always said to everybody, our chickens are just loving it and we're not going through any feed because the chickens are just feasting. So if anybody here was weirded out by cicadas or freaked out by having them flying around, come to our yard. Your chicken keepers have your back. The girls are
They
happy to
did
protect
love to
you.
eat them for sure. Oh my gosh. So let's debunk a few myths, right?
Sure.
So one of the things is people tell you, well, they attract rodents,
No.
and that's not
Right.
true.
That's a big myth. Chickens do not attract rodents any more than people attract rodents. Unsecured food and warmth is what attracts rodents. So if you have mice in your house, they're not there because your neighbor has chickens. They're there because there's something in your house that's attractive to them.
Yeah.
So thankfully, that is a myth. And also, thankfully, if you do have unsecured food or you find you are having rodents around your chicken coop, it's a very easy situation to remedy. There are different kinds of feeders you can get. There's just cleaning up anything like spilled treats at the end of the night. Or what we did is we just encased our entire coop structure in hardware cloth that's
So
a
we
certain
have.
size. So if it's smaller than half an inch, you're not going to get rodents in there. We've never had a rodent in there with our girls with their food or anything. So
The other
and you can
cool
place
thing I
feeders
think is
up.
that chickens will eat a mouse.
They
Um,
absolutely will.
so they're not gonna. They're even if you did get a mouse in your coop, if it ran in through the front door or something, they're not gonna allow it to be there. They're gonna
May it
catch it and
rest
they're
in
gonna eat it.
peace. Yes, yes. And I mean, anybody who wants to check into this, go ahead, have some fun on YouTube, punch that in. You'll see footage of chickens eating mice. And they'll also go after things like chipmunks or, bugs of all sizes and varieties, not just cicadas. So
Yep.
um, I think actually chickens are pest control.
I would agree. Okay, so another myth, and I this one I just find so interesting sometimes is every chicken lays an egg every single day,
Right. It's
and that's so
wild.
not true. Do you want to go into a little bit of the science on eggs?
Sure. So, chicken production, first of all, I want to say a myth that goes along with that is that every egg has a baby chick in it or can turn into a baby chick. So, an egg is essentially a hen's period. So, it's releasing eggs. In a human, they're very, very tiny. You can't see them with the naked eye, but in a chicken, the egg that we eat is, that's an ovum. So, um, if there's no rooster present in the flock, those are unfertilized eggs. So they will never, under any circumstances, turn into a baby chick or hatch into a chicken. It's just an egg forever. If there's a rooster present and fertilizing, mating with the female chickens, those eggs will likely be fertilized. Can you still eat a fertilized egg? Absolutely. So there's no difference to the consumer, but if you take that fertilized egg and take care of it under certain circumstances, you can end up with a chicken. So that aside, that's the partner myth to that. But most chickens do not lay an egg every single day. I would say that mine range from 4 to 5 ish. I have one who's really productive, and she's probably 6 a week. But
Okay.
there are some who are 3 a week. And as a chicken ages, she hits her peak reproduction and around her second year of life. So then she's releasing eggs more frequently. But as she gets older, she's going to lay less and less frequently. Some will stop altogether. Some will keep laying until the end of their life, but it might just be an egg a week. It could be an egg a month. I call that henopause. So
It's cute.
that's really relevant too, because in our very first city hall meeting, somebody said, well, 20 chickens is plenty because who can eat 20 eggs a day? And there were just so many things that weren't right about that comment. One being just that not all chickens are laying an egg every day. Not all chickens are laying an egg at all. And that doesn't mean they don't have value to the flock. The other being, however many eggs your family eats is a personal issue, and that's up to you. Whether you decide to share your eggs with family, friends, and neighbors, we have a thing where anyone who babysits for us gets free eggs at the end of every visit. There are people who donate them to food banks that will then distribute them to pantries.
Yeah.
So whatever you do with your eggs, is your thing. And then, the other part of that comment was just like, well, what do you do then with all the hens who are not laying anymore? So if people are being restricted to a low number, which, by the way, 20 is an extremely low number if you're on an acre of land.
Yes, it is.
Yes, chickens do not.
Well, and the other interesting thing is around us, we're in what I would consider a north suburb. Some of the communities are now even increasing. I feel like Wheeling, Illinois recently just increased the amount of chickens you're allowed to keep. So for our town to go and say, no, we're going to decrease is reverse of what a lot of the communities in our area and in our county are doing. So again, that's just kind of going backwards again instead of forward with the way the world is moving.
The upsetting and baffling thing about it to me is just because Prospect Heights was founded by people who needed to be close to a city for work or whatnot and still wanted to homestead and work land and just have a substantial amount of property. And those were the principles it was founded on. And, over time, that's become in vogue and people are more and more interested in living that way. And it's not just like, a 1 or 2 year fad. This is here to stay. This is like when people were starting to eat organic food. And at the beginning, there were people who made fun of that. And most of your grocery stores are carrying a significant amount of organic produce now, organic everything. So this is not a trend. This is not a temporary fad, I should say.
No,
this is a trend,
not at
very
all.
positive, sustainable direction. And
you can get chicken food, right, on Amazon now and on Chewy and some of these regular pet places. You can order a chicken coop off Amazon. It's going to be here. Like you said, it's not a specialty anymore. You don't have to go to a farm store or a rural community to get your supplies. It's here to stay.
Right. And I'm surprised that some of our elected officials are not realizing that history is going to judge them poorly for this and that residents are going to vote accordingly. There are just so many people in the community who are upset about this and afraid about this and moved here specifically so that they could homestead and raise chickens. And the fact that we are overlooking all of those people and only looking at 1 or 2 problem households a year. And our zoning, one of our city employees in the October meeting said, we're talking about, 3 complaints a year and they're easily resolved. So to me, that's not the kind of thing you spend time and money solving. Prospect Heights does have really serious health and safety issues that could be addressed. And this is what we're spending our time on. I don't understand. I don't understand why the democratic process is just kind of being, I won't say totally overlooked, because I think on paper they're checking the boxes of hosting the meetings. But if you listen to these recordings, it's baffling to hear people say things that are blatantly incorrect about chicken keeping or chicken biology, then to have very educated and informed people stand up and calmly tell them where they're incorrect. We even had a few people with an agriculture background at that meeting, one of whom has been employed by the USDA as their day job. And to have those people telling you, well, that's actually not correct. That's not how chickens work. This is how they work. And then to have those same myths repeated almost as if we said nothing,
Yeah.
it just starts to make you wonder what's really going on here.
Yeah, it does.
Why are they so determined to make these rules? What is this? What's driving this really? Because it's not residents.
It is absolutely not residents, at least not the majority of residents, right?
Right.
I think that was clear from the standing room only, the 1,400 people that have signed a petition. And for those of you who are listening and are not aware of Prospect Heights, we are a tiny, tiny suburb. We are around 16,000 people in total for our suburb. And when you think about the city of Chicago, it's 3 million plus, I think, at this point downtown, right?
Right.
Maybe way more than that. But like,
Right.
so
Yeah. I'll go
we're
with
a
your number.
small subset of Cook County, and we are in Cook County, and a lot of our city is actually in an unincorporated part of Cook County, which also we're on well water. So I want to give people some insight if they've never been here. We are on well water. We have no public sidewalks for half the community. There are not a lot of streetlights on every corner because we are an unincorporated part of the county who intentionally want to live this way. Like we like this rural feeling that we get by being close to everything. We have convenience, we have the ability to drive, whether it's downtown for culture or to a job, right? But at the same time, we get that feel. And like Genevieve said, those large backyards and the space for our kids to grow up. And
Mhm.
I often joke, but I also think it's true. Like sometimes my kids can live like it's still 1980 and go out the back door and come back when it's dark because I feel like they're safe in my backyard and then the neighbor's backyard. And our backyards are big enough for them to kind of play and have an adventure. And I don't want to lose that. I also don't want to lose the fact that we have the ability to educate not only our own kids, but the neighbor kids through
Yes.
raising chickens and teaching them small agriculture or gardening or like growing and producing their own food and cooking from the garden and like or like raising your own eggs and learning about how to cook your eggs. And there's all of these aspects that come into play. And so when
Yes.
you look at the larger picture, I think it's important to keep that in mind.
Oh, yeah. And we're not just educating our direct neighbors. There are friends of mine from other towns who bring their children specifically to my backyard because they can play in the garden, pet the chickens, collect eggs, kind of play at agriculture, which
Yeah.
is great because you know what? Not everybody wants to live this way. And that's totally fine and acceptable. I mean, one of the beauties of being on such large lots is that we can live this lifestyle without imposing it on anybody else, and that we can have an impact outside of our town. And I, have people who ask me for eggs who live elsewhere, but don't have chickens of their own, but really value what we have. So they say even though I can't have chickens or even though I don't want to have chickens or for whatever reason it's not going to happen for me, I see the value in somebody knowing their food this intimately and producing it mindfully and
Yeah.
humanely and lovingly, and also with an eye toward, health and wellness. And, for me, I just think these are the eggs I feed my child. My baby has never had eggs that just like I've never bought eggs since she's been alive. They've always
That's
just been
amazing.
ours.
Yeah.
And there are other people who want that too, and I love that I'm able to do that for them. So it is a slap in the face when you do hear a city employee who does, people who don't live here saying, "Well, this number of chickens should be enough for you." How would you
Mhm.
know? It's a very personal thing, and I think the other thing that rankles people is that some of the comments that have been given to the press about chicken owners paints them as sort of wild or delinquent or I don't know, unprofessional. When everybody who owned chickens in that room was so educated and well spoken, and most of them have day jobs in very what you would consider modern, business like professions. I mean, I do
Mhm.
um, nonprofit consulting, management consulting. I'm a project manager and I'm also a medical editor. for a major company that produces medical and patient education materials. So it's not that I've like, I don't know. I think there's this idea that like we're some sort of fringe group that's so unusual, and we're not. We're your
You're
neighbors.
not
We're your
the
friends.
Woodstock children.
Right. And you know, no disrespect. That's great too. But you know,
Yeah.
chicken keepers are not just country people who grew up in a
Yeah.
very specific way. We are just
Anymore, you can be blue
chickens.
collar, white collar, it doesn't matter, and still have
Yes.
chickens.
Yes. I mean,
Absolutely.
they're a great equalizer. It's like, I mean, having a dog. I mean, people of all walks of
Right.
life have dogs. You know, there's different reasons to pursue anything,
Absolutely.
but that dismissive sort of attitude, and that painting of us with one brush, like we're all the same, is so mind-boggling to me, and it's very out of touch. And that's it. I did not realize that so many of the people who were in a decision making role in our town were that out of touch with reality and with what residents want. It's really unsettling.
It is. And I think, like you said, the next election there'll be some changes and we'll see
There
them.
absolutely
Yeah.
will. And I think that at the time we're recording this podcast and it's coming out, there is still time for people to change their minds, you know, educate themselves a little bit and think, you know what, maybe I can revisit this issue. Maybe there's another way for me to achieve the same end. And maybe there's a way for me to stand with the residents and what they actually want.
Yeah. So with that, I think our call to action for those of you that are listening, our huge favor that we would love is like share this with somebody else, like help us share the word. But also, if you're local to the north suburbs, if you're in the Prospect Heights area, I'll put the information with the post. But if you can attend the next city council meeting, which is coming up, I think in a week, and the next zoning and board of appeals meeting, that would be super helpful to just show that you're on board. And I would say if you're against, feel free to reach out, message me online. Let me know how I can help you, what's causing the disturbance, and why you're so against chickens. I'd be interested to have that conversation as well.
Absolutely. We are very solution oriented people, and we want all of us to be able to live in peace. And that is not an impossible goal.
Absolutely not. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Tiffany. I really enjoyed it.
All right, you guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Share with me what you learned today. And let me know, seriously, like, can you help us? Do you have any questions around chickens and chicken politics and raising chickens in the suburbs? We're here for you. Ask us any questions. Satnam, love you guys. So if you love this episode, remember to share it with your friends. Send it to anyone who may love this inspiration and information. And if you are somebody in the press or media that picked this up, we would love to talk to you, to work with you, and to help us share the word. The city meetings are coming up June 26th at 7 p.m. at Prospect Heights City Hall. We'll drop that information in the shares as we share this out. And with that, guys, have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thanks for listening.